Okay, now the next speaker that we have is this man that knows the ins and outs of the Gomez family. Woo! I want you to put your hands together for Billy Nunez. Thank you, Billy.
I do know the ins and outs of the Gomez family, so for about $3,000 today and today only, I can offer you that special deal. Daniel, I'm just learning, buddy. I'm learning. Listen, guys, you may not know much about us, but Angela, my wife, and I are from the we're from the Florida Keys. Right now, we live in Fort Lauderdale during the week and the Florida Keys on the weekend. Has anybody ever been to the Florida Keys or down to Key West? Okay. About 10 years ago, we had an empty nest. We raised our family here in San Antonio. We had an empty nest, so Angie and I, we're going to be married 41 years this July the 10th. And so, yeah. She's put up with me that long, and so we decided to go on an adventure because we wanted, when you got kids in the family, we have 3 kids. When you raise your kids, a lot of times your life is poured into those kids. And so after the kids left, we looked at each other and thought, we need to rediscover each other because the most valuable thing that I have in my life, besides my relationship with Jesus Christ, is my wife. And so I didn't want to lose that because a lot of families, they just kind of disintegrate when they have an empty nest because they're not sure how to rediscover each other. So we went down to the Florida Keys. When we got down there, I'm going to tell you, it's a great idea to want to live in the Florida Keys. And for some, it fits perfectly. But for this San Antonio boy, and then we had a place in Austin as well. When we moved from Austin, Texas, where we were living at that time, and moved down to Key West, and living on that island was so different because when you live in the Florida Keys or down in Key West, you're about 3.5 hours from the closest Target, the closest Walmart, the closest shopping mall. So life is a different existence. So we lived in Key West for a few years. Then we lived in Marathon, which is the Middle Keys, right where the 7 Mile Bridge is. And then we experienced Hurricane Irma that came through. And after Hurricane Irma, my wife Angie said, no more Florida Keys. So we do live full-time in Fort Lauderdale now. But I want to tell you something about the Keys. If you ever visit the Keys, it's beautiful. I mean, it's just amazing. The water is crystal clear. It's just phenomenal, just kind of experiencing that existence down there. We had a boat at one time because when we lived in Marathon, we lived on a canal that went out to the Atlantic Ocean. And so we had this boat, but I didn't have a boat lift. And so when you don't have a boat lift, our boat stayed in the water. And when your boat stays in the water, for those of you who have boats, at least it's true in the Keys, we get what's called a beard around the bottom of the boat, right where the water level is. And when that happens, you've got to clean that off because you can't navigate the boat well with that beard on there. So we would take the boat, and out in the Keys, there's a lot of uninhabited islands. So you go out to this island, you anchor your boat out there, you anchor the front, anchor the back, position your boat just right. So it's about thigh deep or waist deep, so you can kind of stand there and clean. Now, you've seen my wife, Angela. You've met her. She's 5 foot. So when I bring the water level to my waist, it's about to her nose. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to pay for that later. But I will tell you this. When you start scraping, you get like an ice scraper for the windshield, and you start scraping those barnacles, you start scraping all of the stuff off of the boat. And what we learn through that process is a lot of that stuff is alive. So when you're scraping it off, you're actually chumming the hole. And when you chum the hole, you actually get fish. And when you get fish, our friend said, watch out for shark. And so after about 6-7 months of going out to those islands and cleaning that boat and watching over our shoulder for shark, she said, no more. So now we have friends with boats, and that's the better deal. So anyway, all right. But let me tell you something about the Keys. It's a lot of coral, it's a lot of sandbars, and if you don't know the Keys and you start getting a boat and just driving around, you're probably going to land on something that you don't want to hit. We have a friend that has a coffee shop down in the Keys. He actually was out boating one day. He was about 35, 40 miles an hour, hit a coral reef. When he did, the boat dead stopped, broke both of his cheekbones and his nose because he went straight into the windshield. So you got to be careful when you're boating down there. So what we do in the Keys is we actually, well, not we don't do it, but like the Parks Department does and the county, they'll put these markers out on the reefs. They'll mark where you need to be cautious and where you can drive to stay in the deep water and stay in the channel. So for years now, what I've done is I'm actually the director of culture for a national real estate company. We're in 35 states with almost 9,000 agents now, got about 150 managers, and my job as director of culture is to absolutely work with them to make sure they understand how to stay in the deep water and avoid those destructive things that we can run into as business men and women. So what I want to do is just take a few minutes and give you a couple of tips, okay? Anybody know the Tower of Pisa? You ever heard that before, the Tower of Pisa? Okay, when I was growing up, and now, come on, you're going to have to admit this is true. I used to think it was the Tower of Pizza, but I've learned through the years it is not. It's in Pisa, so it's the Tower of Pisa. Engineers have been looking at it because right now it's at a 3.99 degree tilt. Engineers say if it gets to 5.44, it's actually going to fall. When people have studied that and think, why is that the case? They've come to understand that in the planting of the foundation, the building of the foundation, there was some selfish ambition involved. And many times selfish ambition will take precedent over reasoning. And when it does, faulty foundations can be laid. In our businesses right now, many of you in this room, I'm so excited because I see the excitement in your eyes. I see the dreams that are happening in your heart. And I'm excited for you. I know that some of you want to storm through doors and kick doors open. And that is awesome because back in the beginning of December, I feel like God spoke to me and gave me a word for my life for 2022. But I believe it's the same word that he would give to you. It's out of Isaiah 22:22, and this is what it says, that he is going to open doors that no man can shut. And he is going to shut doors that no man can open. And I believe that God has that truth for you today. You dreamers in this room, those of you right now that are working towards starting something new, you feel it, you sense it, you know it. I believe he's going to open doors that no man can shut for you. And then he's going to shut doors that many of you have been in that rearview mirror. We've heard that a few times today. There's going to be doors that are going to be shut back there. Not that you won't remember, but they won't affect you the way they have in the past, if that makes sense to you. So, here's what I want to talk to you about real quick. One of those markers in the Florida Keys that keeps us in the safe place, I believe is very important in our business, if you will. I'm going to illustrate it that way. And the marker is this. It's what caused the Leaning Tower of Pisa to lean. It's a faulty foundation. And I believe that all of us in our business need to make sure that when we start this journey, we start the journey with a foundation that is laid appropriately. One of the keys to an appropriate foundation is this word right here. It's the word integrity. Integrity. In real estate, we call it structural integrity. If you don't have structural integrity in the structure of a building, it doesn't matter how beautiful the structure is. If the integrity is faulty, the building will fall. And I believe it is very important for all of us to understand that we need to start this vision. We need to start this dream. You need to start fulfilling this thing you're called to, making sure the integrity foundation is laid correctly. I'm going to tell you the story of two guys real quick. These two guys are from Chicago. One of them, he grew up years ago. We've heard of him. Has anybody heard of, before I talk to you about him, anybody heard of the guy Al Capone? Does that ring a bell to you guys? Okay. Al Capone, notorious gangster. A lot of people have heard about him. They couldn't catch him with anything. They tried to nail Al with all kinds of things. They couldn't catch him. One of the reasons they couldn't catch him, and probably the main reason they couldn't catch him, is because Al Capone had a great lawyer. His lawyer's name was Easy Eddie. And listen, if you're going to be Al Capone's lawyer, you've got to be called Easy Eddie. I mean, it just makes sense. Every time I say that, I want to shrug my shoulders and go, Easy Eddie. I mean, it's just like, it's just one of those things, I'm Easy Eddie. Easy Eddie was so good, they couldn't get Al with anything. Al loved him so much, he bought him an entire city block in downtown Chicago, built this huge house, and anything Easy Eddie wanted, Easy Eddie got. Through the years, Easy Eddie has this child. When he has this child starts growing up. Easy Eddie's watching this child grow up. He does not want to cause any kind of hindrance to the child's future. So Easy Eddie decides that he is going to make a deal with the DA and turn in Al Capone. So he makes this deal with the DA, and they get Capone on tax evasion charges, and they are actually able to finally nail him. The sad thing is, months later, actually a couple of years later, Easy Eddie's driving down the streets of Chicago. He is assassinated about a week before Al Capone is released from prison. So this is a man who you can see had this foundation of integrity that probably wasn't the best, and how his life ended in a failure. Now, that's one man from Chicago. But let me tell you the story of another guy from Chicago. This guy over here, he's a World War II pilot in the South Pacific. He takes off from the aircraft carrier with his plane, and he's headed out, and this guy's name is Lieutenant Butch O'Hare. He gets out and he realizes that the people down on the ship forgot to gas up his plane. So he radios back to the ship, and they don't want to lose him, and they don't want to lose the plane. So they say, you know what, you're going to need to come back to the aircraft carrier. He doesn't really want to do it. He wants to finish the mission, but he decides it's best and he wants to obey orders. He turns around, flies back to the fleet of ships. On his way back, he discovers 9 enemy bombers that are approaching. He single-handedly, running out of gas in his plane, shoots down 5 of those 9 enemy bombers. He lands safely. He ends up losing his life. They lost his plane and his life a couple of months later, but he did get a Medal of Honor. He gets a battleship named after him, and the Chicago International O'Hare Airport is named after Lieutenant Butch O'Hare. Why do I tell you that story? Because you can see how his life ended because he had an integrity foundation that was firm and strong. But Lieutenant Butch O'Hare's dad was Easy Eddie. So the combination of the giving his life away for his son ended in such a way that his son was able to stand on a foundation that made such a difference for his life. I want to exhort all of us, before we go a step further in our vision, in our dream, in our longing, we need to evaluate, what does the integrity of our heart look like? What does the structure that we're building, what is it resting on? Because it needs to be resting on the truth of who we are, who we want to present, and let's not present any kind of facade that is fake. My name is Billy Nunez, and I build culture. Thanks so much, guys.